the fall of 2009, my first year in this work, St. Albans Episcopal Parish in DC became the first congregation in our region to go solar, and that's the picture you see on the left. And today, over 100 faith communities in our region are powered by solar panels, either on their roofs or on their grounds, and at least a half dozen of those are right here in Montgomery County. We've created a map, and you have a little graphic from that map on the slide, but we'll put the link to it in the chat. We have created a map of the faith facilities we know of that have gone solar, and we welcome help keeping it up to date. These congregations, especially at the beginning, were pioneers. But at this point, any congregations going solar today can benefit from everything the congregations that have gone before us have learned. So we at Interfaith Power and Light have tried to learn everything we can from these successful congregational solar projects across our region. And the most important thing I want everyone to understand today is that the vast majority of these congregations with solar panels on their roofs or grounds do not own the panels. And they did not pay the cost of having the panels purchased or installed. Instead, they found a private company to put up solar panels on their property at the company's expense, and that sells the congregation the power produced by those panels. I am going to say that again. The congregations that are going solar in our region were able to do so by finding a private company that put up the solar panels on their roof at no upfront cost, at their own expense, and continues to own the panels and sell the congregation the power that the panels produce. The agreement governing the sale of solar power to the congregation is called a power purchase agreement, or a PPA. Congregations considering solar energy projects will be comparing the terms of these proposals in terms of this power purchase agreement, PPA, with the company that will install and own the panels. Developers will try to price the energy from the solar panels at least a little bit lower than what the congregation is paying for energy now, and to increment the energy price up over the life of a 20 to 25-year contract, either not at all or much more gradually than their grid energy prices would have been expected to go up otherwise. So you heard this right. The implications of what I am saying is that companies are putting up expensive solar panels on the roofs and grounds of faith communities at their own expense, and then selling the power made by those solar panels at a price less than what the congregation was paying for energy from its own outlets before. In other words, congregations are getting solar panels at no out-of-pocket cost to them, even maybe a slight savings because of their energy bill reductions. The Green Bank folks do not want me to use the word free, but if they weren't here, that is how I'd be describing these kinds of financing arrangements. They are basically enabling congregations to go solar for free. Now, you may be wondering, how could that possibly be? How could we be talking to congregations about what will essentially be no-cost solar panels? These financing arrangements are not, here's what they're not. They're not just because panels are expensive. And I want to give you a ballpark for your own thinking about what we mean when we say, because they're a lot less expensive than they were even a few years ago. But ballpark, I consulted with one of my solar developer friends over the weekend. Ballpark, when he thinks about a project that's small, like the one, small by their standards, like the ones on a congregation, he thinks about solar as costing about $2.50 a watt installed these days. We usually measure solar projects in terms of kilowatts, so thousands of watts. And most of the projects we'd be talking about financing this way for congregations would be no smaller than about 25 kilowatts. So the cost of that solar project and its installation may be about $63,000, and then obviously much bigger projects would go up to $80,000 or $100,000 or over $100,000. But we are not doing these financing arrangements just because solar panels are expensive. Because when organizations want to buy expensive things up front, things that cost $63,000 or whatever, that they will use for many years into the future, like real estate or a van, they get a mortgage or a loan to pay over time with interest. They don't arrange for someone else to own the item. So that's not what this is about. What this kinds of financing, this PPA financing, is about is that several of the major ways that solar projects are profitable are by reducing taxes owed. So you have to be a tax-paying entity to enjoy those benefits. And because nonprofit organizations like congregations don't pay any taxes, solar projects are much less profitable for them than they are for for-profit entities. And that is the reason that these arrangements in which private companies end up owning panels on nonprofit roofs have become the most common pathway to successful congregational solar projects. It's important to understand why solar financing for nonprofits is structured this way and how the companies involved are making their money, so we can trust that it's legit, or kosher, as my people say, and that it's not too good to be true. But we need to understand what's happening on the back end of these deals so we understand how these companies are making money. So here's my list, quick list behind pulling back the curtain. How are companies that offer power purchase agreement arrangements making their money back? So the first is a federal solar tax credit of 26% off the entire cost of the panels and their installation. That is a very significant tax credit available to companies that pay taxes. I have an asterisk there because that will be the case for about a year and a half before it is scheduled to step down to a lower percentage. So start your project now. If the project is eligible for a Maryland state incentive, like the Commercial Energy Rebate Program, that is another way that the developer may be able to make some of their money back. This third one is a biggie: depreciation against their tax liability. When you own a property that loses value, you can take the loss in value against your taxes owed. Now, solar panels will generate energy for 20 years or more, and many of the power purchase agreements will have 20 or 25 to 25-year terms. So they do not lose their value quickly, their actual value. But there is an accounting convention called modified accelerated cost recovery that allows company to act as if, for tax purposes, on paper, these very valuable panels they own lost all of their value in the first 5 years. They don't have to wait until they really lose all their value in real life. For a company that pays a lot of taxes, being able to depreciate solar panels entirely over 5 years is a huge boon for them. And again, one completely unavailable to an entity like a congregation that doesn't pay taxes. Fourth item, SREC sales. Interfaith Power and Light and other good folks have advocated for strong clean energy laws in Maryland. And we currently have something called a renewable portfolio standard in place that requires utilities to purchase solar renewable energy credits, SRECs, from the solar producers in the state of Maryland. For every 1,000 kilowatt hours generated by panels you own inside Maryland, you can sell one SREC to the utility with prices that fluctuate within parameters laid out by the law. Selling SRECs is one of the ways solar developers make money on power purchase agreements, but they're only a sure bet in the short term, since this is what they call a compliance-based market, which means the value of SRECs is dependent on laws that could change. Just for a sense of scale, I looked it up. The value of a single SREC in Maryland right now is about $77. So $77 right now for each 1,000 kilowatt hours of power generated. Some solar owners will choose to sell SRECs over time, get as much money as they can for them, but wait for the generation to occur. But others will sell all the SRECs the project will ever generate to an SREC aggregator who gives money up front in exchange for eliminating the uncertainty and delay of waiting to see if the laws stay in place and if the SRECs are worth something in the future. And our final item, and this is the first one that involves the congregation directly, power purchase agreements by the congregation for the power generated by the panels, which the developer will aim to set, as I said, below the price the building is paying now for energy, and they will increment the price you pay for energy up each year, either not at all or much more gradually than your energy prices would have been going up otherwise. In a minute, my friends at the Green Bank will talk more about how this plays out on the other side from your perspective as a congregation. But for now, I just want to highlight a few things about how these power purchase agreement or PPA deals operate on the back end from the perspective of the companies that own your panels. First, the reason these companies are prepared to offer congregations such favorable terms, solar panels at no upfront cost, is because the most significant ways these companies make money on the deals don't involve your congregation at all. And the tax credits and depreciation, which are a huge boon for them, could not be enjoyed by your congregation as a nonprofit organization without tax liability. That's the first big takeaway. The other big picture thing I'd like you to understand, the terms of your power purchase agreement may be 20 or 25 years, but the companies and the solar panels will generate energy for well over 20 years. But the companies are making most of their money in the first 5 years. Tax rebates accrue in the first year. Sorry, tax credits accrue in the first year. If they aggregate SRECs for sale, so all at once, all of that money comes in the first year. And then the depreciation can be taken in the first 5 years. So even if you sign a PPA that specifies energy payments annually for 20 or 25 years, understand that the company has made most of their money on your solar project after the first 5 years, and they may be open for it to change hands at around that time, year 6. I'll close my section with some advice from the rector, who was at St. Albans when they went solar using a power purchase agreement over a decade ago, which matches what we ourselves have learned in working with congregations. While PPA financing has become routine in the solar world, it is often a brand new way of thinking for the people like us who work in faith communities, and for those like board members, executive directors, and building committees who will be the decision makers on these projects. The Right Reverend suggested that every person who would be making a decision about the solar project needed to be told how PPA financing worked, not once or twice, but 14 or 15 times each, in order to be ready to confidently and comfortably review a PPA proposal from a developer. This is slow, patient, community organizing work. And by the time your community's board members or other decision makers are looking at proposals from PPA providers, it is too late to go back and start helping them understand PPA financing for the first time if they've never gotten their mind around it before. So I'm going to put a link to download our solar guide in the chat in a minute. Please take the time to do this organizing work inside your community in advance, because it will make all the difference.